This, we're now joined via Zoom by Dr Roche Mamabolo, who's the Managing Director at the Lora Centre for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the programme.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Just how important is a summit like this and an expo like this in perhaps trying to re-engineer the way that we think about local production?
I think, Peter, in a country with such a very high unemployment like ours, and especially youth unemployment, any opportunity that we find, to create jobs is more than welcome. And I think this summit goes a long way in trying to come up with some form of ideas in terms of how can we support local economy with the emphasis of creating jobs. So I think this is quite a very important summit that we need to take seriously.
I'm going to ask you to go back in time a little bit, and I'm reminded of Rhodesia when it was under full-on sanctions. What Ian Smith was able to do was actually create a completely self-sufficient, not completely, but near self-sufficient country. And that's how he survived sanctions for so long. I just wonder what lessons we could learn from that, because that would be the way to go to try and do as much at home as possible rather than importing.
But I mean, we can say the same. I mean, back also in South Africa during the apartheid years, that during those times also, we have seen a closed economy that actually has done very well for a very long time. There's quite a number of things, Peter. I mean, one of the things that these systems have done very well to be self-sufficient is to produce the skilled employees that have got the technical know-how in terms of manufacturing products. But also the fact that you are closed out, you don't have options but to buy locally. So the system itself was engineered in such a way that, look, we don't have other options but to survive. Necessity is the mother of invention. So education became very key. Localization was a no-brainer. People had to support each other because you had no other options. You could not import. But also what's also very critical was the role that government played in supporting local industries. In South Africa, you look at Sasol, you look at your ISCO at the time, most of these SAA were industries that were created by the government because they didn't have any other option. So if government plays a role, if we all as individuals play a role, there is that success factor that we might actually succeed in being self-sufficient.
All right, and I suppose the other thing we've got to get over is we've got to make sure that buying local doesn't mean buying inferior.
Absolutely. I think that has been the complaint, isn't it, for some time, that people are saying, look, I don't mind buying local as long as the quality is competitive, as long as the price is competitive, as long as the support that I'm going to get from local suppliers is there, and I think that has been the complaint. I mean, we see it time and time again where local entrepreneurs actually go over abroad in China and they buy all these products and they come and they sell it here. And people buy them because they are cheaper, it makes business sense. So on the one hand, we want to be patriotic and support local. But on the other, it also needs to make business sense for entrepreneurs to say, yes, this that I'm acquiring, I'm selling it at a profit and I'm able to be sustainable.
So what are some of the challenges that we face locally in terms of competing with prices? I'm thinking about textiles, for example. Why is it still cheaper to go to China, put stuff in my bag, bring it here and sell it rather than make them locally?
Good question. I think ultimately it's the cost of labor. That's the biggest differentiator. In the value chain, you'll find that, the labor cost in China for some time, even though it's changing now because Chinese are now starting to demand higher wages. But for a long time, it has been their competitive advantage that they are able to manufacture the same thing that we manufacture here at a cheaper labor cost. And that's what has made them to be competitive. And that has always also been sort of like a complaint by local business people that the labor cost is regulated, and it's a bit difficult to fire non-performing employees. It's costly and all those things, and therefore we are unable to compete with the likes of China, for instance, when it comes to price. So it's always been the cost of labor. I think, we spoke about special zones, economic zones. I also think that if we can experiment with a couple of those zones to say, let's give these zones maybe tax incentives for employees to employ some of their team members at a lower wage, for instance, and maybe those employees can pay less tax. And let's see, as an experiment, how that would work. And if we find that that is actually working successfully, maybe there's a case to be said about the fact that maybe our labor costs are actually inhibiting our competitive advantage.
I'm going to touch on something that you raised earlier, and that's skills. When I grew up, there were streams, and one of them was the artisan stream. And you left school, you got an apprenticeship, and you became a tool maker, a boiler maker, whatever it was. And one doesn't see that much anymore. There's a scramble for university, and I just wonder if we need to change our thinking so that we have a whole huge pool of skills to create and to fix and manage all these different product lines.
Yeah. A good point. I think I run an entrepreneurship academy, and one of the things that we have avoided doing is saying to our entrepreneurs that ultimately the goal is to get a certificate. The goal is to get a skill. When you go out there, do you know how to build a business? And I think increasingly more competitive economies globally have skilled labor forces. One of the reasons why South Africa produces the best nurses in the world is precisely because as we take them through a 3-year training program, we also take them to hospitals. So they gain the skills, they gain the experience. By the time they finish, after 3 years or 4 years, they have the academic qualifications, but also very importantly, they have the skills to know how to operate. They're not seeing a hospital or a ward for the first time when they finish their qualifications. We need to bring that in. We need to, artisanships, boiler makers, welders, those skills are highly, highly in demand. In fact, I was talking to a colleague the other day that we are importing these skills from Zambia and other African countries because they are doing a very good job of manufacturing or graduating quality artisans. So absolutely, we need those skills. We need to change the mindset that, what's more important is not the qualification on the wall, but it's what is it that you can do. When you enter into a job tomorrow morning, I give you something to do. Will you be able to do it? That gap between our graduates and their ability to do the job is actually widening, and we need to close that gap. It's a serious concern.
You spoke also about the role that government can play and the role that governments played in the past when the economy was more closed. What is it that government is not doing all that well right now? We know that they work really hard with things like BEE and empowering black business, but it seems that there's something missing and we need to do other things at the same time. What is that's missing?
Peter, there are so many things, right? But I can give you just one. Pay small businesses on time, right? That's the biggest complaint. If you can pay SMEs on time, they get to be in business for a long period. We have all these amazing programs, all these amazing ideas and plans. And, the challenge is not with ideas. I think for us as a country, the challenge is with the implementation. If government, if National Treasury can push national departments or local departments or provincial departments to pay entrepreneurs on time, it might sound mundane, it might sound like a small thing, but cash flow is the lifeblood of any small business, right? Without cash flow, all these other things are academic. We can talk until the sun rises. If you don't pay me on time, I'm unable to pay my team. I'm unable to buy raw material. technically I'm insolvent. So all these things, all these grand ideas, we can have them, but they mean nothing if we struggle with the basics of paying entrepreneurs on time.
All right. I mean, one of the things I'm sure that you must be teaching at your centre is, and this is one of my bugbears, and I'll probably get unpopular for saying this, but I do give people chances. And you know what? They take chances with me, and I'm the customer. How do we change that mindset where the guy comes and he does his absolute best for me, as opposed to I'm struggling to get him to come on site, I'm struggling for him to finish. It just becomes an endless cycle.
Training, right? It talks to training. It talks to have we produced the right, entrepreneurs with the right quality? One of the things that we need to sort of work on very hard is to move from a survivalist mindset to an entrepreneur that is really seeing a gap in the market and they are closing that gap in the market. So often you have that survivalist mindset of, if I can just get a deal now, I'll do a smash and grab approach. I can just do this job and I'm gone and I'll do something else for someone else. We need to have that mindset of, I see an opportunity, I see a gap in the market, and my role is to go out there and close that gap and do a very good job and if possible, monopolize that market and own the industry or own the value chain. So it's the quality of entrepreneurs that we are looking for. Not, I don't have a job, I can't find a job. I don't want to stay at home, and therefore I'm just going to do whatever is possible and maybe even start a business. So entrepreneurship will become a last resort. So we want to change that mindset and make it something that graduates, high school students aspire to want to be. And if we are able to do that, we are able to then produce the high quality entrepreneurs that are not only focused on the local market, but they go big and they try and export to other countries in the continent and globally.
All right, and perhaps finally, if you can answer this one quickly, because I think it does speak to patriotism. I lived in exile for a while, and in the UK, China and all these other countries were starting to come in to the UK, and they started this huge campaign of, buy British, here, proudly South African. How does this become something that we wear in our hearts and on our sleeves, that we go out and look first for a South African equivalent?
Look, I think, the summits like the ones that is happening now by Proudly SA, I see quite a lot of young entrepreneurs coming up in the fashion industry, who are doing amazing things. They've managed to build themselves a brand and people are buying into it. And it's equivalent to saying, if you can buy overseas product, you might as well buy a local product. But I think the distinction here is it's a quality product, right? You are proud of it. It doesn't wear off, within a short space of time. It's something that is durable. So more messaging, more, we need to celebrate these success stories. We need to showcase them on TV and media. We need to inculcate that culture from a young age, that buying local is something that we do as a habit, as something that we grow up doing, not something that it's a campaign that will fizzle out after some time. So we need to convert this into a way of life. So it's both ways. It's PR, but also it's entrepreneurs stepping up and giving us something to be proud of.
Dr. Roche Mamabolo, thank you so much. Great talking to you, and I hope that shirt is local.
It is absolutely local. It was produced by a local designer. So absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you so much, Peter.
So there you have it. Buy local. It's the right thing to do. It really is. And be proud of it as well. To be honest with you, I don't mind paying a little bit extra if it's good. Just to support local. There's a local airline, national airline. I often used to pay more than competitors, but there was just this thing about being patriotic and flying the flag. All right, we're going to leave